federal government put me in prison for 30 months, it's some of the best days of my life. I look back at it. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but I miss it.
Why?
Because I had a chance to do some selfish things, get myself in the best physical shape I've ever been in. Okay. I was 50 years old and I lost 80 pounds and got myself in shape like I had never been in before, even when I was playing football. Serving the Lord in prison was really meaningful.
Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. On today's episode, I have Michael Stickler with me. Michael is the publisher of leadership books and the author of several books himself. Michael, through his books and publishing company, aims to equip leaders and organizations to expand their reach and impact. He's also a farm kid like me. We talked a little bit about that, our background as an animal science student at Cal Poly years and years ago. Michael, thanks for being here with me.
This is going to be a pleasure. I can tell already.
Yeah. So, there's so many places to jump in, but I'm going to weave this one as you mentioned, the difficulties of agriculture, as we were just kind of back and forth a little bit, and how you're either born into it or you die from it, right?
Yeah.
I want to take that transition and say, how much does that show up in our current leadership? I would say mistrust, meaning that same type of direness, right? That it's either we force ourselves to make it happen or we kill ourselves making it happen. How that is really shown up in so much of our corporate world today, and why so many people do not trust leaders. What do you think of that?
I think one of the greatest things for the two of us anyway, that was put in us from being farm kids, being the kind of guys that were raised around agriculture, is the independence and the stick-to-itiveness that is lost in our culture. I think of the days when I was cowboying, which by the way is a job, and it's a very difficult job, but being out, miles from anything and being faced with a problem that I had no one else to solve it but me. And then the stick-to-itiveness, you don't go back, you don't ride back in and say, well, I couldn't do it. This cow died because I didn't work on it. This cow died, this heifer ended up dying with his baby hanging in and out of it because I couldn't rope it and deal with it. You can't do that. And I think the problem with today's culture, not the problem, but one of the problems is this stick-to-itiveness. And I see it myself in our own business with staff that we bring on. They just disappear. They don't care whether they signed an employment contract with you. They don't care whether they like working there or not. They see another opportunity and they're gone, and they don't care what they did to the people that are around them on the way out. And to me, I don't have a slot for that at all. I can't understand doing that to someone. And it happens so often that it's a culture thing. It's not just an individual thing.
Here's what I think interesting is you mentioned the cowboying. What is real cowboying? With the last few years, we've had shows like the Yellowstone and all the other, kind of dramas that show the Western lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And, there's not too many shows, written about dairy farms. I mean, that'd be a whole different level of intensity. But one of the things that I gather from you is we have a society that I think yearns for that place. I think we have a society that yearns for being a part of something that matters more than showing up and punching a clock. And what I've seen, what I see in my sons, my daughter, who are in their late teenage years, is if you give them something that matters to care about, they'll be all in and care about. When you're talking about the heifer and I can relate to days of being on a farm, and my workforce was my parents and my sister and I, and if I couldn't figure it out, I was going to figure it out. There was no one to go to. There was nothing
Right.
to walk away. I had to make it work. And I think that's what's lost, is because too often I don't want to say we bail people out. As a parent, I'm guilty of it. My sons can't do something. It's like, all right, well, I'll help you do it, as opposed to, no, figure it out. And that was a generational thing. But I do see this idea that the more that we can bring that back into our society is very healthy.
Yeah.
Be willing to fail. Be willing to say, I don't have the answers. All right, well, figure it out, because you can't, there's tools at your hands I didn't have, that you didn't have,
That's
that
right.
you can get there. I think it's helping people understand they have that agency is something that leaders have the opportunity to do today they don't realize.
Yeah, and a leader in my view is one that comes alongside of that person and says, look, my job is to facilitate your ability to do your role, whatever your role is.
Yeah.
So I don't mind mistakes. Mistakes are fine, even when they're expensive. I don't mind mistakes. What I care about is, what was your decision process and leading up to this, and what have you learned from it? That's what I care about. I had a guy who I instructed multiple times on shipping several pallets. It was basically our entire show exhibit, shipping several pallets. And he looked at me and he said, I completely get it. I understand. And then he did exactly opposite of what I said. And it cost me about $5,000. And he thought I was going to fire him over it. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to fire you over it. Did you learn from this? What, and we walked it through, and you know what? He never did it again. And so leadership, in my view, is really a servant kind of role. It's not a top-down role, but it's a role that says, I come alongside of you and let me see what I can do to help you in this. I want to give you the resources, which is the time, the training, the finances. I also want to give you the coaching to get you there. But also, if the relationship needs to end, just do it quickly.
Yeah.
Because I have team where I'll just say, well, this isn't going to work out. We're going to have to do something else. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, you had to perform. I hired you for a reason, and you needed to perform, and you're not willing to perform. And so at the end of the day, I've done it with lawyers too. I hired you to win this case. You didn't win this case. You're fired. What? But I tried so hard. Try doesn't count.
Yeah.
Okay. Completion of the job is what matters.
Well, I think that the loss of a merit-based society, I think, has eroded a lot of trust.
Yes, I completely agree.
So how do we rebuild it?
Well, I think by examples, putting it in, I'm 65 years old as I sit here. I have leaders in my organization that are your age. And so I take the time, I really put my time into, and I guess I'm speaking to guys my age, I'm really putting the time into, the leaders that I have around me to help them understand what this means, what the merit-based respect means. You're really giving people dignity if you value their merit. Okay. And dignity matters. All right. And so removing that out of our cultural, and I'm talking about our corporate culture, removing that ends up making people that don't have a lot of dignity and then all of those things that we started out with, talking about our own weaknesses, our own frailties, all of that seems to magnify when you haven't given them dignity, when you haven't given them the role and the ability to complete the role that you've given them. And then the very first thing I do when I come alongside of them is say, my job for you is to make you a reproducer. And they're like, what do you mean? I want you to take the things that I learned and I'm going to give to you. And then when you're bringing a leader up, you do the same thing. You need to reproduce and add to all the things that you've learned into their lives. And so then it becomes self-replicating. And I have worked with and under some of the greatest leaders. I mean, it's amazing. And yet if I named the most significant leaders in my life, they're completely without celebrity. Nobody knows who they are.
Yeah. Well,
Eh,
I would say that's the epitome of, Jim Collins is good to great. It's like
right.
those 11, great leaders, they wouldn't, maybe household names for a generation, but not really. And yet
Hmm.
they didn't do it for that. My definition is we're talking about, as you say, come alongside someone. I define empathy as putting your arm around someone and walking with them.
Yes.
When I hear what you say, to me, that's being an empathetic leader to say, yeah, we're in this together. You may fail, I may fail, but if we're in it together, we're going to end up somewhere.
Yes.
And I weave that with the thing that you said about dignity. And this is something that struck me as you said that. If we don't give people the dignity of understanding their merit and valuing their merit, we're essentially saying we have a fixed mindset.
Hmm. Yeah. I've never thought of it that way, but you are. Yeah. Yeah. And if you, in that fixed mindset, if you don't fit within my mindset, then you don't have value in
Yeah.
in what we're trying to accomplish.
So if we aren't being merit based and we aren't recognizing merit, we're essentially not giving the opportunity to people to grow, to change, to evolve, to, following Carol Dweck, the whole idea of a growth mindset is that, whatever you are today, you can grow into something better. Like you mentioned the guy that, shipped the wrong pallet, did something wrong. And you're like, well, he never did it again. Well, he grew.
Yeah.
If you would have said, hey, that's your mistake, you're never going to be different than that, and you're fired, well, then you just as much discounted his merit as you did firing based upon merit.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I think also to recognize, I had somebody say to me the other day, this dignity thing, this merit, this purpose in the organization is so powerful. I had somebody the other day who had hired as a middle manager. Well, I shouldn't say the other day. It's been about a year now. And she said to us, look, I think we need to develop this kind of pay structure. We need to give this kind of and she basically pulled a rule book out of everything that was from the 80s. Okay. So in the 80s, I'm going, I was a young leader, in the 80s, I was in my 20s, moving into my 30s. And I followed all this guru talk, okay, of what everybody told us that we needed to do to make a value-based organization and all of this. And it's supposed to build great loyalty. Something, by the way, I really value is loyalty. And it didn't. It didn't. It was, and so she came back and said all this. I said, you know what? We tried all that in the 80s. And really what keeps loyalty is when people really find their purpose in the role and in the overall mission and vision of the organization, and that they're pulling on the oars at the same time as the rest of the team trying to get there. That's what keeps it. The pay doesn't keep them.
No.
Incentives don't keep them. Bonuses, those are all nice things that make them feel satisfied, but they're not what keeps people engaged with you. It's really the purpose that they find in the mission and the vision of the organization and their role in that.
Yeah.
That's what finds it. And that is based on their merit. What keeps them there is based on their merit, but also just understanding that they're achieving something towards the overall part of the mission of the organization. For us, I try to really instill in the people that won't get it is, look, the authors that we publish, their hopes and dreams and passions are relying on this book and this course project that we're building. Okay. And every one of them on my shelf right over my shoulder here is all the books that I published in the last couple of months. And every time I look at one, I look at it and say, what could we have done better? And what have I learned from this book that I can make the next one better? Perfection is a pursuit, not an arrival. Okay. It's a pursuit. You never reach perfection. You're always pursuing it, but you're never reaching it. And then secondly, helping them understand that that's the goal is to serve our authors in such a way that that they're feeling like we're really part of what they're doing. That's what builds loyalty. All the other things are nice, but that's what keeps people attached to you organizationally.
Michael, what took you from being a farm kid to doing this?
Well, so on my mother's side, she was the farm ranch agriculture side. On my father's side, my father's whole family are entrepreneurs, whole family. And I came to the realization that there was a whole lot of easier ways to make money than agriculture. um, and I ultimately took on the entrepreneurial mindset, which was already instilled in my family. We're all entrepreneurs. My brother and sister are entrepreneurs. My cousins are entrepreneurs. Everybody on my father's side are entrepreneurs, started businesses, failed at them, succeeded at them, all of those things. And so when I decided to make that change, it was an easy transition into being an entrepreneur. in 2000, I had become a pretty successful platform speaker, and people kept saying to me, "You need to write a book. You need to write a book. This content's really important. You should write a book." And I didn't want to, Tyler. I was the most reluctant author you ever met, and there's a couple reasons why, and some of it was the agriculture. I never thought I had very good training in English. Okay. One of the reasons I love science is because I didn't have to take humanities in college. Okay. I could avoid all of that. And to this day, I never taught myself to type. Okay. I never did. I still hunt and peck to this day. I didn't feel like I had the skills to do it. I didn't feel like and then to add to it, talking about your insecurities and whatnot, to add to that, I grew up dyslexic. And so in the back of my mind, I heard my fourth grade teacher, still hear it. You can't read. She said that in front of the whole class. Mike, you can't read. Sit down. And it still rings in my ears. Okay. I have to put it aside, but it rings in my ears.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing from a guy who's written I just finished my 21st book, and I have 4 bestsellers, and yet you can't read.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about this as we were getting together, and I want to just kind of sit here. You know, make the comment. I talked to someone right before we were talking. It's like, our insecurities will never leave us.
Yeah.
You just talked about it when you were, you know, how many ever years ago, right? I mean, 50 some years ago, you're going back to that moment. And if you choose to believe that, it would keep you from making the impact that you've made. But yet every day we struggle with that. And this is my belief.
Yeah.
Is the leaders that are unwilling to recognize merit, that are saying things that are distrustful, are allowing that voice of whatever insecurity, whatever moment of insecurity continue to weigh on them, that they're unwilling to be vulnerable and say, "Oh, I don't need to listen to her. That wasn't the case."
Yeah. And that's what happened to me. So I started writing books. I wrote 15 books before, and they all sucked. They never got any traction. I look back at it now. I've taken several of them out of publication because it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed to even have my name on that. And in 2013, I left my traditional publisher, and because my traditional publisher was not taking my book, was not promoting my book, was not doing anything with my book. No sales were happening. I was very frustrated with it. And I knew that my book had everything to do with my platform business, going and speaking and engaging people and whatnot. So I had a guy that was a friend who was kind of my coach, and he and I sat down and we talked it through, and we wrestled the book away from the publisher. I actually had to pay the publisher for my rights. And then I took that book and we sat down and we said, what would it take to publish this book correctly? And what would it take to actually, where are people buying books? Are they still buying books? What kind of books are they buying? All the basic questions you ask as an entrepreneur, we applied to this one book. And that it was a Christian devotional about generosity. And that's what I spoke on, is generosity. And I sold 400,000 more than 400,000 copies of it to this date. And it's still probably my best-selling book. And people, and then when I went to write the next book, my coach said, Mike, you're trying to do too much as an author. He goes, your job is to be a storyteller. Your developmental editor's job is to develop the overall storyline. Your line editor is to go through the sentences. Your proofreader is to protect the English language. Your publisher's role is to put the book out there. The marketing teams, and he broke it all down. He goes, your job is to be the storyteller. And man, that set me free. That completely set me free from all my hangups about, can I write well? I mean, completely set me free. All I had to do is tell a story, let me loose. I am good at telling stories. That's what made me a decent platform speaker. And so from there, to this day, if you looked at my writing after I just got done putting my first draft down, you're like, man, this guy's illiterate. I mean, he's nothing but red lines and crazy misuse of words and whatnot. It's because I'm busy with my two fingers telling the story, and I don't care about any of those things. And then I go back and I fix it up. Yeah. And then I usually give it to my wife, who cleans it up even more before I send it to my editor. just beforehand. And you know what? My 16th book was a bestseller. My 17th book was a bestseller. My 18th book was a bestseller. Now my 19th and 20th books are on their way. Yeah. Because I became a storyteller and I built a crowd.
Here's the leadership lesson I take out of that I think so many people struggle with, is I got to be everything.
Yeah.
No, you just have to be you.
Yeah.
No one can tell stories like you, obviously, right? The stories you've gone through, the stories you've shared with me, right? We have a couple similar stories because of our background, right? There's some interweaving there, but like the difference, right? The experience you have is so much different than me. And, it's one of the things that I've learned is kind of this idea of whether it's coaching, whether it's speaking, whether it's leadership, is no one has gone through what you've gone through. So I could even say the same words as you're saying, but it's totally different when it comes from you because of your experience and vice versa, right? We could write the same words in a book, the exact same words, same stories, right? And yet it's going to be different coming from you because of what your experience has been compared to me. I think that is powerful for leaders to understand, as opposed to thinking, well, I'm competing against you, Michael, to say the same words.
So I agree, but I'm going to add a part to that.
Please.
You have to be an excellent observer of people. People are the thing that we're going to, especially as an author, we're going to interact with. I had a professor / mentor at Cal Poly who, his name was Gifford. He actually is like famous now. He passed away when I knew him as a young man, but he took us out and he sat us down in the middle of a pasture full of horses. He said, I want you guys to just sit here and not talk to each other and just study the horses in a herd setting and make as many notes as you have learned about how they communicate with one another. It was probably one of the most impactful moments or hours of my life, understanding horses. And in the same sense, I love to study people. I was up skiing. I live up near Lake Tahoe. I was up skiing and I had a guy, you know how it is. It's too busy during lunchtime. There's no individual seats. So a couple of guys came over and wanted to join me at my table. And I said, sure. They're from the Bay Area. And they asked me, what'd you do for a living? I said, I'm an author. And they said, well, what's it take to be a great author? I said, an observer of people. And I never thought about it. But as soon as he said it, I said, an observer of people. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, you know, if you're going to write about people, you have to understand how they work. You got to understand how they think, their body language. You have to be able to describe when they use pauses, things that energize them, things that they want to avoid. You have to do that. And the only way you can do that is sit and learn, not in a judgmental way, which I think is so often nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are sitting around being judgmental. No. Actually, if you do this without judgment, you actually become very enriched by people's lives and their cultures and what they do and how they do it and what they think about and how they laugh and all of it. Okay.
Yeah.
All of it. And then be able to start to translate that into writing. So for example, with you, I would describe you, your physical characteristics. I would describe the way you smile. I would describe the way you stop and pause and think. I would mention that you got a Rottweiler who, you love very much and he loves you back and that you're companions. I would describe so many different things about you just to set up the knowledge of that character in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I would constantly go back and connect you back to how I set you up to understand how you created in your mind's eye, in your imagination, who this character is, and then carry that through. Because when you do that, people will identify themselves in the story. They will identify the situations in the story. Say, man, I have been there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They will do all these different things to understand. And that's what keeps them reading. The number one business book in America is Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Do you know what the subtitle of that book is?
I have the book. The subtitle's not hitting me right now, but
A Business Fable.
oh yeah.
It's a fictional book about everything he knows about, well, not everything, but everything he knew at the time when he wrote the book about developing and consulting with in the corporate culture. And everybody reads it. They read it because they go, man, I identify with that guy and I understand. Boy, I've been in that meeting. Oh my God, I've been in that meeting. That's why they do it, because he took the time to observe people and then put that into a book.
Yeah. The interesting piece there is, and maybe relate to this, is you probably went to school with a few of these. I don't want to work with people, so I'll work with horses. I don't want to work with people, so I'll work with cows.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about my career is I realized it was always about the people.
Yeah.
And the thing now that I realize is I have a couple steers out here in my pasture, is that what I've learned from cows and be able to apply to people has made working with people so much more fruitful and easier.
Yeah.
Share your experience maybe there.
So in the horse business, I trained under a Hall of Fame horse trainer. I trained under a couple, but one of them, his name was Bob Knutson. And Bob was a difficult man, and I was a cocky young man. And he eventually fired me. But nevertheless, I learned a lot of things from him. One of the things he did is he taught me that with horses, you have to make the wrong thing difficult and the right thing easy. And I learned later on, he got that from Monty Roberts and some other, guys that were really teaching this the horse whisperer kind of thing that's come to know.
Yeah.
But I recognize that works with people too. So for an example, in the corporate culture, train your clients to do the right thing. Let that become easy and the wrong thing difficult. Well, Mike, what do you mean by that? Well, so if you have chosen as a corporation or as an organization that you're only going to answer customer service replies via email, then be the fastest email responder ever. Be as complete as possible. Make sure the people that are doing that are communicating thoroughly, asking questions, building relationships. Okay. Don't farm it off to somebody that, English is their second language, right? And then don't allow people to call in. If they do call in and leave a message for customer service, answer via email. Make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult. If that's your decision, it might not be right for yours.
Yeah.
But that's what we do at Leadership Books. We respond to everything, and then we just try to be the best communicators we can. Why not? We're supposed to be book publishers.
Yeah.
Okay. So why not? And same thing with the way you treat your customers in sales. Find the right thing that you want them to do, and then teach your customers to operate that fashion. And then when you make the right thing easy, they'll fall right into that flow. And we all know this. We've got guys that are my age that will not text. Okay. Will only email. Okay. I'm one of those. Don't text me. I don't respond to you. Okay. And then we got guys your age or younger. They only text because email is stupid. That's for, the boomers. Okay. Well, if you're trying to sell something, you're going to be successful emailing a guy my age, or you're going to be successful texting a guy my age. You're going to be successful calling me, or you're going to be successful. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Figure out a way to make the right thing easy, and it will carry you so far. And that all came from horses.
Here's the piece that I take from that is it's not hard, but you have to be really intentional.
Yeah.
It's no different than, as we look today in corporate cultures, we see Amazon's going to lay off 30,000 people. We have, whatever the feeling is in the economy. It's like, well, is that wrong? Maybe, maybe not. But if we stop and think it's wrong, then we don't realize, coming back to merit and growth and potential. And where I say that is if we all of a sudden associate with, a change as being wrong, then in that case, that change from, hey, I'm going to email Michael rather than text him, means that I'm not willing to say, hey, what's best for the customer? What's best for that person long term? And I think that's where a lot of leaders struggle. They're like, well, they need to do what I want them to do. Well, yes and no. Go do what if you want a client, if you want a business to succeed, then you need to make sure it's easy, not difficult.
That's right. Think about the layoff part. If maybe you're not, everybody in my view is a leader, but maybe people who are listening to this are not necessarily in a leadership role. Maybe you're that person that's sitting in a phone bank with all these people that are answering customer support things, and the layoff comes. I don't know the reason why Amazon's laying people off, but the layoff comes. Trust me, somebody is looking at a list of people in the room on your right and your left. Somebody is looking at this list, and they say, you know what? We're not letting Tyler go because Tyler always fulfills his role. Tyler always gets great. He comes in early. He starts on time. He leaves late when it's over. He always finishes the work that's in front of him. Everybody loves him. He's busy supporting those who are around him. That's the guy we need to keep on.
Mm-hmm.
Joe over here, Joe shows up late. He complains constantly. His customers think he's lazy. He's the first one to go. And there's an aggregate list of how they decided that. Right. So be that person that be the leader that you can be in your role to yourself by making the right thing easy for the people that are around you.
Well, that comes back to merit. And, if we can appreciate and accept merit, and a lot of it is we have to reestablish that in our culture. And I think the great way to do it is recognize it ourselves and applaud it. And also, be willing to embrace merit situations rather than thinking merit has no bearing, because if merit has bearing, then we all have potential for growth. If merit doesn't have bearing, what you are today is what you are. That's all you'll ever be. And I think generally our society has come to the point where we don't agree and believe in that, but our actions need to align with it.
Yeah. And you asked a bigger question. How do you change it? Well, you change it within yourself first, then you change it within those circles that you have influence. Okay. Then you do it also by voting. A long time ago, I can't nail the date down, but it was somewhere around 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. I had this whole policy, fire all politicians. Okay. And here's why, because I would look at senators, state senators or U.S. senators, congressmen. I wouldn't have hired any of them. If they came in with a resume in their hand and said, "Would you hire me?" I'd go, "No, you're an idiot. You're so dysfunctional. You would actually disrupt my company. I don't want you to work here. Fire all of them." That was my attitude. Now, granted, that was too much. I basically am independent, but I primarily vote conservative because I find all those things we've been talking about, merit-based and all of that, most likely there. Okay, but I'm an independent guy.
I think there's a whole lot of country sitting right here with us. A whole lot of the country.
And that's my point, is let's start voting that way. Okay. I think the most important election is the primary. Okay. So let's get in there. Let's start changing things up. Use the power of our vote if we want to see our culture different. I mean, if somebody comes to me and they say, "Well, everybody should get an award," yeah, well, that guy's off my list. I'm going to vote. For the guy that
I think it comes back to is if you don't have something, we could go back and forth competition. One of the greatest things that I've learned is the only person I'm competing with is myself. Who I was yesterday, who I am today. Can I be better? Can I grow? Come back to this same growth. And if we don't have that as an ideology, then innovation, service, leadership is irrelevant because we're just, oh, you're the best you ever are. Yet I believe so much of our culture has accepted that, and they want to mandate that as, oh, well, the solution is just to allow people to stay where they are, as opposed to, no, we can grow, we can improve, and we're asking for growth and improvement, but yet we want to mandate to stay fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and part of that problem with that mandating is the realization that you don't know everything. One of the things I train authors, consultants is, please, you guys, stay in your lane. And I fell into it myself as an expert on book publishing and authorship and stuff. People will hire me and I will help them. And then they start asking me questions about, I don't know, PR or HR or, scaling, or those aren't my strengths. But I found myself early on in my career, I found myself coaching people in those areas, even though they weren't my strengths, because I developed a relationship. I was a trusted advisor to them. So I felt like I should advise instead of going, you know what? That's not my strength. I can give you an opinion, but the opinion isn't worth so much. Yeah. Okay. Because that isn't what I do. Well, here's the problem. The politicians all think they know everything about everything. Somebody comes in from corporate America and says, "No, this is actually how this works." They're like, "Oh, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I know all about this." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. I've been doing this for 40 years. I'm telling you, this is how this works." All right. And the politicians sitting there arguing with him out of a knowledge base that doesn't exist. They just think they know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I would say that to every leader. You know what? It's okay. It's okay to just say, you know what? This isn't really my strength.
Yeah.
I have these experiences.
That's such a growth point everyone has to go through.
Yeah.
It's no different what you were saying. It's like,
some don't go through it though, Tyler. Some don't go through it.
But that's where I would say we have, broken leaders is the people that are unwilling to go through, like you did with, I'm not an author. I can't be an author. And then realize, oh, I can be, because an author is just being a great storyteller that observes people. Oh, I can do that. Yeah. Like once you understand, I think this evolution of what leadership really is, it's coming alongside people and helping them accomplish something that they want to accomplish for the greater good. That's what leadership. It's not mandating, dictating, being the one that stands in front of the room and says, "All right, glad you're all here to see me." It's like, that doesn't do anyone any good. Would you say that's kind of the, what you've written about, or that your aim within leadership books is really to help people understand what real leadership is?
It is very much in part. That it's also, the funny thing about creating a book and a course, it's a creative process.
Hmm.
And creativity causes tension. People don't realize that, but it causes tension. So you have an editor who's working with an author, and the editor's saying, you really need to do these things. Okay. And think of it, it's really coaching. Think of it if you go to a personal trainer and they're going, I know you've been lifting weights for, the last 20 years, but you're now 50. And the way you lift weights is different than the way you were lifting weights in your 20s. Let me show you why and how a good
Mhm.
trainer should do it.
Yeah.
And then the student's going, no, this is how I've always done it. This is how I've always done it. Yeah, but you're not getting the results you once got,
Yeah.
you know? But this is how it's done. No, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, you need to change your mindset about this. So
Uh-huh.
that creates tension, see?
Yeah.
An editor does the same thing with an author. I need you to go back and describe this a little bit more clearly. I need you. No, that we can move on. Especially bottom line guys. They do that. And it creates tension. Sometimes authors get angry. All right, and they get upset that they have to go through this. And it's no different. Maybe not training. Like with maybe a physical therapist making somebody do something harder than they've ever done before.
Yeah.
They get angry at them because it's hard and it hurts and all of that. But those are the things that create incredible books. Those are the things that get people engaged. Those are the things that get people motivated. So this idea of avoiding pain or struggle through your growth, you have to change your mindset about it. All the good things are done through pain
Yeah.
and through challenge. They all are.
It's the avoidance of pain that gets us in the most trouble.
Often,
Yeah.
or the
When we,
pursuit of pleasure. Pursuit of pleasure often gets us in equally or more trouble.
yeah. Which is an avoidance of pain, right? It's
Often, yeah.
I'm aiming for pleasure because I don't want to embrace the pain of, you know, it's I want to, you know, go do whatever instead of go to the gym.
Yeah.
Well, going to the gym is going to make me healthier so that way I can live longer so I can am more able to do things to serve people. Well, it's when I think you find the joy in those struggles that really you start to embrace, oh man, this is a much better way to live.
Yeah, I would maybe refine that a little bit by saying you find joys in the result of the struggle, but the struggle you recognized from your past experience of going through struggles that when you got to the result of that struggle you went through and you realized you became a better person, you're more effective at what you do, the reward became much sweeter, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Then the next trial that comes along, you recognize, okay, this is what I'm going through, and I'm going to like the result. The struggle still sucks,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but my acceptance of it in order to get to the result is the best part, and so I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to try to figure out, how to get there. Again, I think one of the richest things in my life is the struggles I've gone through. People I've lost, literally, they passed away. The things that happened with my children, both of my sons are still alive. Of course, my grandchildren are all still alive. But my oldest son fell and hit his head at 6 years old, and we almost lost him. Okay, all of those moments have built into the character of who I am. And no, I'm not a perfect guy, but I am a very resilient guy because I've totally accepted the struggles and the challenges I've gone through and then learned from them all. I look back at every one of them and say, I don't want to change anything about it. I don't really necessarily want to go through it again, but I wouldn't change anything about it
Yeah.
because I like who I became
A-
from it.
as we're talking about this, I think of, and as a person who writes devotionals,
Mhm.
there's two characters in the Bible that um I've learned the most from. The first one is Solomon, and I so appreciate Ecclesiastes,
Right. Me too.
and the journey from being the wisest, richest man in the world to like this is all worthless. Like what is
Yeah.
this about? And then by the end of it, it's like, oh, it's about this. It's about just living. It's about enjoying the people, right? It's embracing the journey as opposed to looking at the rewards of the journey. That's what I've taken from that book. I would love to know just kind of your perspective on that or other pieces that you've taken so much from.
Well, maybe we break it down to this. How do I define a good day?
Hmm.
For me, a good day is when I get up out of the office. I have really good, meaningful conversations with people. I hit the gym. I maybe enjoy a healthy meal, not necessarily a good meal, but a healthy meal. It's not all in one day, but these are things
Yeah.
that happen
Yeah.
during that day. What doesn't make a great day for me are, I don't necessarily, they're not bad days, but I don't mark them up as, well, that was a really great day. Um, is, 12 meetings of Zoom meetings, talking about stuff, having somebody sell me stuff, you know, um, those, those aren't engaging great days.
Yeah.
And in my life now, especially, I'm not near as ambitious as I was when I was in my 40s. I'm more interested in having those kinds of days. Like today,
Yeah.
our conversation, yours and my conversation, will
Yeah.
be marked up as part of making a great day.
Yeah.
Okay. So think about that yourself.
Yeah.
What's going to replicate that? What's going to make a difference in your life? How can you do more of that? Make the right thing easy, and less of those others. For me, what I've done is I limit, sometimes meetings are necessary. So I limit how many of those meetings I'm going to have in a week. I'm constantly trying to determine, do I necessarily need to do this meeting? What are we going to talk about? My team's always like, I need to meet with you. Yeah, what are we going to talk about? I don't say, yes, let's meet. I say, what are we going to talk about? If an author writes me, we need to talk. Okay, well, what's happening? Because often they don't need to talk to me. They actually need to talk to my marketing director or my editor or my managing editor or something
Yeah.
like that, because they're actually the ones that know more about their project than I do. I
Yeah.
have to go ask the marketing director the
Yeah.
questions. So think those things through so that you end up having a lot more better days.
Yeah.
If you have struggles, you can make good days out of struggles. Okay. You
Yeah.
can. I think back, I don't know if you know this or your audience, I'm very candid about it. The federal government put me in prison for 30 months. It's some of the best days of my life. I look back at it. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but I miss it.
Hmm. Why?
Um, because I had a chance to do some selfish things, get myself in the best physical shape I've ever been in. Okay. I was 50 years old and I lost 80 pounds and got myself in shape like I had never been in before, even when I was playing football. Um, Serving the Lord in prison was really meaningful. Um, actually building a church in the institution I was in was probably one of the most meaningful things I've done. And again, I came uniquely equipped to do that. Um, Recognizing how deeply important my relationship with my wife was.
Hmm.
And then here's a big one, actually figuring out who your friends are.
Oh.
Most of the people you know bail on you, okay, when they don't think they can get something from you anymore.
Hmm.
Listen to the words I said. They bail on you when they don't think they could. Most people are in relationship with you because you provide a job for them, or you provide counseling for them, or you provide some kind of touchstone for them. You're providing to them. You're providing to them. They're not reciprocating. And I came away going, you know what? I ended up with like 5 friends that checked in with me. And I'm not mad at the other people, but I know this now. I look back at it and go, the people that are reciprocating in my relationships with them, that want to meet with me, that want to have, if I don't call them to make a meeting, they call me, let's have a meeting. Those are the people I focus my time on.
Hmm.
And the rest of them, they're just they're somewhere on the scale of black holes. Black holes are so powerful that they suck the light out of everything, literally suck light beams into them. So it just depends on how close you are to them. And I don't mean that to be so cold, but it just means, where am I going to spend my time?
Yeah.
What really matters? That's probably the greatest lesson I got out of it.
How has that focus helped you in your pursuit the last 15 years?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not scared of much of anything but federal agents. I'm really not. Been in prison with, some gangsters and whatnot. I'm just not afraid of much of anything. I trust God's providence in everything. One of my best-selling books is because I got stuck into an institution with a guy named Cliven Bundy, who had his run-in with the government, and I wrote a whole book about it, and it became, we're doing a movie on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was just really powerful and really fascinating. And the circumstances of how I got there is just mind-boggling. How I even met the guy. It's mind-boggling. You can't say it's anything but God to how I met him. You want me to tell it to you?
Sure. Okay. Love to.
So at the end of a sentence in the federal system, just so you know, I was at a place in California. They literally, when they coined the phrase Club Fed, they were talking about this institution, which was outside of Lompoc, California. Beautiful place right on the coast. Great weather, just north of Santa Barbara, which is one of the most perfect places in the world. It's a repository of white-collar criminals, so I'm in there with a bunch of old fat guys who were just sitting around going, what am I doing here? Okay, it really wasn't all that dangerous. It really wasn't. It's either got old fat guys that are white-collar criminals, or men who had been in prison for 30 years and they're coming to the end of their sentence and they're just so beat down they don't want any problems or whatever. I often say it was like a lot like Christian men's camp with more cussing. Okay. And so I'm in this institution, and when you get to the end of your sentence, they force you, it's a money game. They force you to go to halfway houses. Now, I know a lot about the prison system because I used to work for Prison Fellowship, and Chuck Colson was a mentor of mine. And so halfway houses are supposed to be for people who are still struggling with drug addiction, or they have nowhere to go, or they need to make a shift in their career. And so a halfway house is just that. They live there while they're getting their act together, trying to put their life together. Well, in the federal system, they make everyone go to a halfway house. I didn't need a halfway house. I had a home, I had family, I had a career, I had a publishing company, I had all of this stuff going. They made me go to a halfway house for 4 months. So I get to the halfway house. You're going to like this story, but I get to the halfway house, and the halfway house goes, they gave me a furlough. So my wife picks me up, drives me from the coast of California to Las Vegas. There's only one halfway house in Nevada, and it's in Las Vegas. And so I go to the halfway house in Las Vegas. I go check in. It's about dusk. And they say, what are you doing here? I said, well, I've been sent here from Lompoc Prison. And they go, well, we don't have you down. I said, okay, well, I need to be somewhere, so I'm here. Okay, because you're technically still in custody.
Yeah.
So they leave me sitting there in the lobby for about 2 hours, and then they come back and they say, you're not in the computer, but I called the manager. He says, just check you in. So we're going to put you in a bed. I said, okay. Next morning, I see the manager and I say to him, hey, buddy, what's going on? He goes, it's just a computer glitch. Don't worry about it, Stickler. Show up to orientation on Monday and we'll get you going. I said, okay. I think that was a Friday morning. So I just stick around the place the whole weekend. I go into the orientation on Monday morning. And as I'm going by, the manager goes, hey, Stickler, we're just talking about you. Come here. I walk around the corner and there's 2 marshals standing there with shackles. They've had an order put out that I escaped. And I have to go, they have to pick me up. And the manager goes, look, he has been here the whole time. He has never even left the building the whole time he's been here. And they go, well, we can't do anything about it. There's an order. We got to pick him up. And so they put me in shackles and they take me an hour and a half north of Las Vegas to a place called Pahrump. It's a town, and there's a private prison there. And that private prison is run by the Marshal Service. And everybody in there is either fighting their case, being transported from place to place, or they're on an INS hold. Okay. And make a long story short, I'm stuck in this dorm with a bunch of minimum security guys. And one of the cultures that happens in prison is all the white guys come up and ask you, where are you from? Who are you? Who do you affiliate with? All that kind of stuff. And once that kind of little thing is over, the last guy goes, hey, have you ever heard of Cliven Bundy? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, he's sitting right over there. He goes, and so he goes, you should go talk to him. Well, one of the things you don't do when somebody suggests is go talk to somebody, So I just kind of left that alone for a while, trying to get lay of the land. And quite frankly, I was very angry that I was there. Okay. More misjustice. And I'm asking God, what are you doing? I should be going home, and now I'm going backwards. I would have rather stayed in Lompoc, because where I was at was a real prison. Lompoc was club fed. I rather stayed there. Well, making a long story short, I ended up meeting Cliven and talking with Cliven, and he was in the middle of his case. He was about to go to trial. And Cliven and I, because we have an agriculture background, became great friends. I wrote in the book that I thought he was going into it, I thought he was a wackadoo. I thought he was going to be like a tinfoil wearing crazy man. It turns out he's just a good old cowboy, like so many other guys I know. He just has his own set of principles. He has a Mormon faith. He's got a great family. He's lived raising cattle and melons out in the middle of nowhere in southern Nevada. And he just wants to be left alone. And so I became friends with him because, in part, I talked with him, I should say. The friendship came later. I talked with him in part, not because I wanted to write a book about him, but because he was one of the few people I actually wanted to talk to in this mayhem of nonsense that I was living in. We got gangbangers and, it's just insane. The insanity is more than you can wrap your head around. And he was somebody I could just sit and visit with and laugh with and stuff. So eventually I asked him, why did you fight the government? I don't understand. Tell me your story. Because I didn't know anything about it. Going in there, I was a clean slate. Okay. Didn't know much about him at all. Even though I'd heard about it, didn't know much. So he just, over time, started to tell me a little of this, a little of that. And the more I heard about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. You should write a book. I must have said it 3 or 4 times. And he goes, I think you were sent here to write this book. And I went, wow. So my wife and I prayed about it, and we thought about it, and I said, okay. So I sat down with him, and they said, I've never written a book like this. So, up until this point, I'd only written Christian books. And so I said, okay, Cliven, here's the deal. You got to be completely candid with me, because I'm going to check out everything you say. I'm going to cross-reference it. Don't embellish, don't lie. And he's like, I wouldn't do any of that anyway. And so he sat down, and for 2 months, I interviewed him. I looked at all the discovery. Now, this is interesting to note. The case was under seal by the court, but at Cliven's feet in his bunk was all the discovery. So I could go through all the transcripts and all the stuff that was said during this standoff he had with the government. And I got to read correspondence and ask him questions. And then every night I would sit and handwrite the chapter by chapter, because that's all I had.
Yeah.
I'd wrap it up. I wrote it on 2 sides of legal size pad, this little short stubby pencil, because they won't give you a long one. And then I would wrap it up, stick it in an envelope, and mail it to my wife every night. The reason why you want to get it out of the institution is because if they raid your property, you could lose it forever. So every night I'd mail it out. And then she also could read my handwriting, so she would type it and put it in electronic form. And 2 months to the day, when we got done completely talking about this thing, okay, and I felt like I had no more questions, and I'd gone through all the discovery, and I mean, he had cases and cases of stuff. When I felt like I had everything, and I asked him, "Do you think there's any more to tell?" And he goes, "I think we've done it all." And I said, "Okay." I finished the last chapter and mailed it to him. The next morning at 5 a.m, I get a rap on the metal frame of my bunk. It's a corrections officer, says, "Stickler, roll it up. You're out of here." I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. Now, the background of that is my wife has been calling my congressman. I'd been going in and talking to the counselor going, "Why am I here? Why am I here?" And they go, "Well, you escaped." And I said, "I didn't escape." I was in where I was supposed to be. That morning, they rolled me up, put me in handcuffs, put me in the back of a van, drove them an hour and a half back to Las Vegas, drove me right up to the curb of the very halfway house I was at, opened the door, kicked me out on the curb and said, "Bye." And I walked back in the halfway house and go, "Hey, Stickler, glad to see you made it back." Put me in a different bunk. And that was it. No explanation, no charges, no nothing. I was gone for 2 months to the day in this place. And then it came back. Well, my office, our headquarters is in Las Vegas. So I got together with my COO and we would go to our office every day and I was writing the book and he was doing the research. We were sitting next to each other. We researched every piece of this book, put it together, started through the edits, which was kind of difficult because I had to send them in to Clive and just have him read them. And his trial started. By then I'm gone. I've gone back home to Northern Nevada, up where I live, and his trial starts. So I fly back to Las Vegas with the plan to just stay there Monday through Friday, come home on weekends, and do this thing. So I was there for every day of his trial. Okay, every day. It lasted about, if I remember, like 4 or 5 weeks, but there was only like 2 weeks in front of the jury as they were fighting. And then the judge comes in and late in December of 2017 and says, "I'm dismissing this case with prejudice." And she gave a 2-hour explanation of why she's dismissing the case and let him go. She actually let him go. I'm jumping over a bunch of pieces here, but let him go in January. And the book came out and it was immediately a big hit. And I went on speaking tours. I've been interviewed by every stinking media outlet you can imagine. Clear over in London to the LA Times to all kinds of different ones because they're like, because I had all of this information about what had actually happened.
Yeah.
And even Cliven said after he got out, he goes, "Mike knows more about what happened than I do because of all the access I had and the research we did."
Yeah.
And it's a really compelling story. And it actually was a precursor into what ended up happening moreover into the government, in the years to follow. But it was just this great opportunity that I see just completely as providential. No explanation. Nobody said anything. They just took me there to meet Cliven for 2 months and then went back to get his interview and then went back. And the funny part is that this is just like some of the stuff. So everything in that trial was under seal. But Frontline, the documentary series Frontline, is I standing next to Cliven in prison Well, we're watching on TV a documentary about him, and they're showing all the discovery, okay, that was under seal. They're showing it on the TV. That the prosecutors had leaked it to him.
Mm.
And we're sitting there looking at it going, nobody's supposed to be able to see this stuff, and they're running these videos. The documentary was slanted and wrong, but nevertheless, it was just a weird moment to be standing next to the guy that they're having a documentary about using the evidence that they weren't supposed to have.
Yeah.
It was just a weird moment. He and I are friends now. We're not great friends, but we're friends now. And
thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. I didn't expect to learn that today, and glad I did.
This is what I mean by this, really, to bring it back, is you get faced with trials, guys, don't run from them, live them out. You just never know what this was all about. By the way, writing that book changed my career, changed my life, changed everything. I was writing Christian books only, and now I've written some other interesting books like that. And it elevated my exposure as an author dramatically. I'm best known probably because it has the longest legs for authoring that book than most of my other books.
So let me ask you this, just for the audience, so they can either dig. Why were you in prison in the first place?
Good question. I'm not shy about this at all. Back under the Bush administration, if you guys all remember, there was a faith-based office, a faith-based initiative office, and I had in my consulting business had applied for a grant for that business. And making a long story short, I applied for that grant, and then the Obama administration came in and they did away with that office. They claimed they didn't, but it went from 26 people to 1. Okay, so the office, it was over. They did away with the whole office. And I had a business manager who I didn't know, was embezzling some of the money out for herself. She had some personal problems going on. I didn't realize this. And 4 years and 6 months later, they sued me for the money that she had embezzled. And I countersued them because I had actually went into second to the last year of the grant, and they didn't reimburse me for it. People don't understand that when you get a government grant, you have to spend the money. So you have to have the capital, then they reimburse you. Okay. It's not like they just wrote me a check for $1.5 million and said, well, good luck. They don't do that. And so the last part of the grant, when the Obama administration came over, I spent about $700,000 towards this, and they wouldn't reimburse me because it was over. So I countersued them, and I won. And then they appealed that countersuit, and the judge gave them more time to answer it, and then they didn't answer it, and so I won again. So my attorneys were setting up to write damages, and the whole thing is going to amount to about $13 million. And the U.S. attorney down there got mad because their office screwed it up, so they filed criminal charges on me. And I fought the case, and what they were doing was trying to pressure me to drop the civil case. And every time they would talk to us, they'd say, drop the civil case and we'll drop we'll do this, we'll do that. It was always something. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because I didn't do anything wrong. So I took it to trial and had a 10-day trial, and I lost. To this day, Tyler, I don't really understand what the jury saw, but I don't complain about it because I had my day in court. I said my piece. We did it. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good trial. And I don't, you don't hear me going, oh, I had a corrupt judge or any of that nonsense. No, we did the best we could with what and we didn't win. I don't know why the jury didn't see it our way. I don't. To this day, I've read the trials. I read the manuscripts probably 8 times. I don't understand it, But so I was, and the very woman who's embezzled the money, she got immunity from the government to even though they knew she took the money, they got immunity to the government to say it was my fault. And then as they got into it, they realized that she actually was the one that embezzled the money, but nevertheless. So that's what ended up happening. And I'm not embarrassed about it. I hold my head high. I talk about it very candidly. I wrote it in 2 books. Just about everybody that ever interviews me wants to know.
Yeah.
All the interviews about Clive and Bundy were all, well, how'd you end up in prison?
Yeah.
And how'd you meet him? I said, well, kind of interesting reason.
Yeah.
People don't understand. I don't care where you are in business. If the government comes after you, you almost never have a chance. You almost never have a chance. And so what they ended up doing, by the way, to prove my point, is they ended up agreeing, the government did, if I canceled the civil suit, they would give me 30 months opposed to 10 years because they knew they had me under their thumb at that point. And so we did a thing called a post-conviction agreement, which, if you think about it, is very strange. They wrote up a 30-page document that said, well, we didn't really mean it, and submit that to the judge, and the judge goes along with it, and you get 30 months instead of 360.
Okay.
At that point, I was pretty scared.
Yeah. 10 years is a long time.
People ask me, why didn't you just plead guilty? Because it was pleading guilty when you didn't do something is a lie.
Yeah.
Others say, well, you're crazy. Yeah, well, it's still a lie. And I got bigger people to account to for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that to me is the impetus of where there's so little trust in leaders. You talk about leaders that, they know everything. It's often I've shared with people is you may lie and stay innocent in the court of law, right? In that case, but you are guilty in the court of public opinion. And there's so many leaders today that are just like, well, we're just going to not tell the truth about what really happened in a situation. And that makes it to where we can't get sued, right? Because of all the legal whatever. And it's like, but you've lost all trust with anyone.
Yeah.
And I see that so many times, especially in public leadership, right? Corporate leadership, it does not so much, it happens, but in the public leadership where people will choose to lie. And when I say lie, misrepresent the truth. Someone, hey, we're releasing someone, they resigned. Like, no, they were under investigation and you don't want to get sued by the union. So you'll let them resign as opposed to, no, they were under investigation. Like, just tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, truth is a thing that people don't want to grab onto. They want it to be self-serving. And sadly, we have a tremendous amount of people in the public sphere that play loose with the truth. And I also don't blame people. I was in the institution with all kinds of guys, just as you described, corporate guys, people that, a whole bunch of people that got caught up in the 2009 real estate debacle.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole bunch of guys in there, who made slight changes in their applications and ended up in prison over it. I knew another guy,
probably a few people from Bakersfield.
Probably. I know I can think of some others. There's just a lot of people, a lot of men. I was only in an institution with men, but there was just a lot of men who were in there, and they almost all of them pled guilty. I only met one other guy who had pled guilty, and it's because you don't really realize, you have this mentality that the justice system works like you were taught in high school, if you were taught it in high school, and it doesn't. They come down on you so hard. They take all your money from you. If you don't give in and start and plead guilty, they tell you straight to your face, I'm going to prosecute your wife. I'm going to prosecute your kids. I'm going to prosecute your dog. Okay. And that's after, you've been fighting them and your money's being drained and all of this is going on. And so I understand why so many people do. It's not about justice in so many ways. It can be vindictive, and I'm not saying everybody's innocent. I'm not. Believe me, and I'm not. A lot of people say, "Well, Mike, you're a liberal hearted, liberal guy, and you just want everybody out." No, no, I've been in prison with some really rough guys. I want them to stay there. All right, I don't want them running around with my family loose. Okay, but it the um the consequences to it are, has anybody ever stopped to realize whatever happened to Rudy Giuliani? He's just disappeared off the scope. Well, they beat that guy to death until he's just like, I just want to be over here. He was one of the most public figures ever and had a reputation, but now he just wants to, sit. I'm assuming he just wants to kind of sit in the corner and, be with his family.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of fortitude, and it really is my faith to recognize that I pled guilty, or sorry, I would not accept a guilty plea. That's what I'm trying to say. Because I'm not going to stand up in front of a federal judge, the community I have helped over the years, and my Lord, and say something that I didn't do. I lie from time to time, but it's about stupid stuff like, why was I late to a meeting? Okay. Or no, I didn't eat that other brownie, honey. Okay. That's the stupid stuff I lie about. I don't lie about this, the things that are standing up and that really matter.
Yeah.
And so I risked it all. I put it out there, and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I knew I was risking it all.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And
Michael,
God got me out of it. God delivered me.
It's, I mentioned Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and I think of Paul and, what he went through for a much bigger purpose. And, I think
Joseph.
sometimes, exactly. Yeah. And it's, understanding some of those, and you can be, it's far fetched, but it's like, no, there's other people, and it's, are you willing to be wherever you are? And, I think I shared with you earlier, as we were talking beforehand, about my brother dying when I was 14. And, I was at lunch with someone yesterday, and it's like, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. And I understand the ability that what I had to grow through, going through that and everything else is, it gives me an opportunity to share with so many people and give them hope. But also all the things that I had to learn because of it. And, kind of like what you said in prison, it's like, yeah, there's something good to come of it if you choose. And, some people, scoff at that, or, kind of like, well, it's your choice. Do you want to, going back to our conversation about merits and values, like, do you want to see there's an opportunity for growth or not? And I choose there is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Trials come to you. I don't care. Since that time, I went through the love of my life, my college sweetheart. She died of brain cancer since that time. And you go through trials that I told friends when she was going through that, and I was loving her through her last days of her lives. I said, man, send me back to prison. That was a piece of cake compared to this.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we are faced with things, whether we did them ourselves or because they came upon us. It's really a measurement of your character. You're going to stand up, and I was dedicated to serving that woman till the day she took her last breath, and I said goodbye to her. In prison, I was dedicated to serve those men until the last day I was supposed to be there. Are you going to stand up and serve, or are you going to sit and whine? You'll become a better man of it no matter what happens.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Embrace it.
So, yeah.
Michael, where can people learn more about you, leadership books, all those things that you're doing?
Yeah, best thing to do is if you want to contact me, go to leadershipbooks.com and you can fill out the form there, or send an email to support@leadershipbooks.net. And either one of those will get you to us. I answer all my emails. We have a policy to answer every email within 48 hours. So we answer every email. I'd happy to hear from you. If you want to know more about my story or any of the authors' stories, we have about 2,200 authors now. And so we'd love to We'd love to see what you might have as an author yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone watching on YouTube. Make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to get notified whenever we drop new content. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you can rate and review this episode, it will help more people find impactful leaders like Michael. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.